Hey everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. It's Karen here, and we've got a new fun tutorial for you this week. We are going to be focusing on the mystical lantern motif. And if you haven't seen this motif before, you're in for a real treat. It's worked in the round, and you can make so many amazing and wonderful things with this motif. In fact, for those of you that saw the I Spy Hot Pad, which was the Home Sweet Home project a few months back. I already have forgotten which month it was. We're so deep into the year. But actually, I did use this motif and then I squared it off. So that was what was different about how I use that motif. Now, in general, this motif can be stitched together to create like a scarf or an afghan or something like that. But I've got a couple of other ideas that I'm going to be using this motif for. But I've created this tutorial so that you have something that you can reference back that just specifically deals with the motif on its own. So if you're ready to get started, let's dive in. Okay, so for this tutorial, I am going to be using Lion Brand's True Boo yarn. I've got some of this left over here. Now the yarn that I used for these is, I believe it's a Premier yarn. It's some leftover and it was part of their bamboo line. I believe you still can get it at Michael's. And so these are the pieces I have here, which you will see at the end of this video what I decide to do with my motif. So the hook size I'm going to be using is a 4.5 millimeter hook, which is also known as a G or a size 7. Of course, use the appropriate hook that you're going to use for your yarn weight, okay? And as always, just make sure that you have a yarn needle on hand to weave in your ends and a pair of scissors to snip your yarn. So let's get started on our motif. So our motif is worked from the center out, and we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And then I'm going to chain up 4. And you can decide to chain up 5 if you're a bit of a tight crocheter, but I find 4 generally works for me. And once you've chained up 4, you're going to go back to the very first chain you created, and you're just going to slip stitch to join your chain into a ring, just like that. So the center is right in there. I know it's hard to see. So what we're going to do next is we are going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. Okay, so this is round 1 that we're beginning. And what we're going to do now is we're going to work into the center of this ring. And let me just make sure that we can see where it is right there. This part may be a little bit wonky to start. And what we're going to do is we're going to work a double crochet into that center. And if you can, I always like to try and work over my tails. So I have a double crochet. Okay, so remember that chain 4 counted as a double crochet chain 1. So I've got a double crochet here and I will chain 1. And this is what you're going to repeat until you have a total of 12 double crochets and 12 chain 1s. So I double crochet again, chain 1. Back into that same ring, double crochet and chain 1. Okay, so you've got these little spaces there. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of round number 1. And this is my last double crochet, and then I have one more chain 1. So you can see my circle has been formed. And then what you want to do is find the top of that 3rd chain, which for me is right there. I'm going to insert my hook, and you are going to slip stitch. And round number 1 is complete. So you should have 12 double crochet stitches and 12 chain ones, okay? So right now it looks like a circle, but we are about to change that for round number 2. So let's move on to round number 2. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna go into this little chain space here, and we are gonna slip stitch into the space, okay? And now we are going to chain 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this time our chain counts as a double crochet and a chain 2. And we're doing a chain 2 because we want this to be one of the peaks of our eye. So then what we're going to do is you're just going to yarn over and go back into that same space and double crochet. So you've got a V that's a little bit wider there than the ones in the previous round, okay? So this is going to be the top peak, and then we're going to make a bottom peak down here. So next what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1 and then move into the very next space. So you will place a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. So what we're doing here is we're placing a V-stitch into every space. And you'll always separate it with a chain 1. Then you move into the next chain space and V-stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Okay, just like that. So you're going to do that for a total of 5 times. So I've done 2 already. So I'm going to work into each of the next 3 spaces in the same manner. Okay, so I've completed my 5 sets of V-stitches. Now into the next space, we are going to create our next peak. So it's going to be similar to a V-stitch. So you're going to place a double crochet. But what we're going to do here is we're going to chain 2. So those of you that are fans of granny squares, you know that in the corners, we always chain 2. And then we're going to go back into that same space and we are going to double crochet. Okay. So the chain 2 just creates a little bit more ability to bend. So now you can see a little bit more clearly. We've got the top peak and the bottom, or vice versa. So if I turn it that way, you can see it's starting to shape. It's starting to form its shape a little bit. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces left, and we're going to do exactly what we did previously by chaining 1 and V-stitching into every single space. And you're going to do that to the end of the round. Okay, and this is my last V-stitch here. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to find the top of the 3rd chain, which is right there for me. And I'm going to slip stitch to join round number 2. So it still looks a bit like a circle, but you can start to see that the top and the bottom points are starting to form. So you've got something that looks like that. And at the end of round number 2, you should have 24 double crochets. So I'm not technically counting the chain 1s in between, just to make it a lot easier. So round 2 is where we actually create the base of that ellipse type shape or the eye shape. And then as we build up subsequent rounds, you're going to see how it's really going to take form. So let's go on to round number 3. So for round number 3, I'm going to slip stitch into that chain 2 space. And I'm going to chain 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, this will count as a double crochet and a chain 2. We're going to go back into this chain 2 space and double crochet. But this time we're going to add an additional double crochet into the same space. Okay. So we've got technically a double crochet, chain 2, and then 2 double crochets. When we come back around to end off our round, we will place 1 more double crochet in there to make it nice and even on each side. So what's going to happen now is we are going to revert to half double crochet stitches. And this will really help make our points a lot more pronounced. So next what we're going to do is we're going to go into the space right beside where that chain 2 space is, and we're going to place 1 half double crochet stitch. So we're still going to yarn over. The difference is we pull through all 3 instead of doing that twice. So it's a much shorter stitch, and it will definitely make our points or our peaks a little bit more prominent. So in between all of our V stitches, we're gonna place 1 half double. And then what we're gonna do is into every V stitch you see, we're gonna place 2 half double crochet stitches. So we're gonna insert and half double crochet. And then again, back into that same stitch, half double crochet. Okay, so now I'm going in between the V. I'm gonna place 1 half double crochet. And into the V, I place 2 half double crochets. I want you to notice that in this round, we are not chaining 1 between each stitch, just straight half double crochets, okay? So now you can really see where the double crochets happen. They're sitting a bit more prominently. So go ahead and do that until you get to the bottom peak, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so I'm just doing my last half double crochet in that space between the V, and now I'm back up to my V stitch with the 2 chains. Now, if you're a little newer, I actually probably should have mentioned that it might be best if you put a stitch marker or a safety pin or something in each side so that you can easily identify it, or simply just count backwards. So we know that we have 5 sets of V's, and then we have our chain 2. So we are going to create a more prominent peak now. So we're going to go back to using our double crochets, and in that space, we're going to place 2 double crochets. So there's 1, and there is 2, and then chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 double crochets back into that same space. So we have 1, and we have 2. Okay, just like that. So now you can really see that that peak is really taking shape. So then all you're going to do is you're going to continue doing what you did on this side down the other side. So coming out of here, I'm going to go into the space here, first space between the V, and I'm going to half double crochet. So remember, we're going to half double crochets. In the V, you're doing 2. So repeat that same method all the way down the other side. And I'm just coming up to the end of my 3rd round. The last half double crochet, now remember we did that chain 5 there, so we need to place 1 more double crochet in there. So remember, we're going back up to double crochets, and this will give us an even look here. And then you just want to find the top of the 3rd double crochet, which is right there, and you're going to slip stitch to join. Okay, so round number 3 is complete. I now have 40 stitches. Now you might think, well, I thought we were going to have 36 stitches, for those of you that understand following the principles of a circle. But remember, this is not a circle. We have 2 peaks, 1 on each end. So normally you would have had 36, but because we increased 2 stitches on each end, that gives us an extra 4. So we have 40 stitches in total. Okay, and now you can really see that your shape is becoming much more prominent. All right, let's go on to a round number 4. And in round number 4, we're going to use all half double crochets. So let's do it. Okay, so for round number 4, we're going to slip stitch into the corner space like I always like to do. And then we are going to chain 4 instead of chaining 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 of these chains are going to count as a half double crochet, and the other 2 are going to count as our chain 2 corner space. So you're then going to go back into that space, and you're going to place 2 half double crochet stitches. So we have 1, and then there's the second one. So that's part of our first peak. Now what we're going to do is we are going to work into each and every single stitch instead of the spaces. So right away, our first stitch is here, and we are going to place 1 half double crochet into that stitch. Okay, we're going to place a half double crochet into the next stitch. And now into the following stitch, we're going to place 2 half double crochets. So we have 1 and we have 2. So we are following the principles of crocheting rounded edges. So coming out of our corner, hopefully if you can see that this belongs to the chain 2 space, we've done 1, 2 individual stitches, and then we did 2 together. So that would be the pattern. We do 1, 2, and then 2. 1, 2, and then 2. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way down until you get to the next peak. So you have 1 stitch, and you have 1, and then into the next one, you're going to place 2. Okay, so I have 2 stitches left. I've just finished an increase, so it works out perfectly. So we have 1 and 2, and now I've gotten to my peak here, and I'm going to place 2 half double crochets, chain 2, 2 half double crochets. So we're basically repeating what we did in the previous round, except instead of using double crochets, we are using half double crochets. So there is my second one there. Okay, you can see that really forms that peak nicely. And then coming out of the peak, I'm just going to repeat the pattern that I did going up. So I'm going to go right away into that first stitch and just half double, and into the next half double, and then into the following one, it's going to be 2 stitches. This yarn is a bit splitty. Okay, you're going to probably notice that your work is rippling a little bit, and that is because we are kind of putting a lot of stitches into one area, but don't worry about that. That will all smooth out with subsequent rounds. Okay, so go ahead and finish that, then I'll meet you at the end of round number 4. Okay, I'm at the end here, and I'm now going to work into that initial peak with 1 more half double crochet. Okay, and then I'm going to find the top of my second chain, because remember it's half double crochets, and I'm going to slip stitch to join, and then I always like to slip stitch into the corner there. Okay, round number 4 is complete. You can see once I place my hand on it, it does flatten out a bit. So you can really see this beautiful magical ellipse type shape. So at the end of round number 4, I have 60 stitches. And I'm actually going to finish my motif off with round number 5, but you can certainly do more rounds. I just find that with this type of motif, because it's in a regular shape, if you do too many rounds, it just really does start to buckle, and it's harder to kind of keep it under control, so to speak. And because of the fact that I'm using this for a little art project myself, I don't want it to be bigger than 5 rows, or rounds, I should say. Now, remember that this bamboo yarn, which I think I forgot to mention at the beginning, it's like I think they call it a lightweight number 3, but in my opinion, it's more like a finer weight number 2. So it's really, you know, it's almost barely just the size of my palm. Now, if you were to do the exact number of rounds that I'm doing, but like, let's say used a medium 4 weight yarn, your mystical lantern would definitely be a lot larger. So keep that in mind if you want to make something a lot larger, but don't want to run the risk of encountering all of that buckling situation. You can always go up to a heavier yarn weight. Okay, so let's go on to round number 5. Okay, so for round number 5, I've already slip stitched into that corner there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to chain 3. So we have 1, 2, and 3. For this final round, I'm using single crochet stitches. So one of these chains is going to count as a single. The other 2 is going to be a chain 2 corner. So we're going to go back into the space here, and we're going to place a single crochet, and that is what we're going to use for this entire round. The difference is here, I'm going to work into the back loops only of these stitches. So I'm going to go right away into that very first stitch. Notice I only placed 1 single crochet. So in the corner, we're only going to place a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. So into the very next stitch, which is right here, it's easy to miss it. We're gonna go into the back loop, so that's the loop furthest away from you, and we're gonna single crochet. And it's just basically one stitch into every stitch. So again, the next stitch is the back loop only and single crochet. Now I try not only to go into the back loop, but I try to catch another loop in the bottom there on the back. I just find that it just creates a more sturdy piece of fabric. So that's why you might see me picking up 2 loops, okay? And by working into the back loops, it pushes the forward loop forward to create a really pretty ridge like that. So that's it, super easy, one stitch into every single stitch. And when you get to your corner, you're simply just gonna go into the space, you're gonna place a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then you continue placing one stitch into every stitch all the way around. But for those of you that are a little newer, I will meet up with you at that peak there just to take you through it. Okay, so I'm coming up to that next peak here. I just placed the single crochet into that last stitch, and look at how pretty that ridge is. It just creates a really beautiful defined texture. So we're gonna go into the corner space and we are gonna place a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet back into that corner. Okay, just like that. That's just gonna give definition to our point. And then you continue on as usual. Remember, this first stitch sometimes gets hidden. We're gonna place a single crochet, one into every single stitch all the way till you get back to the first point. Okay, so I'm coming up to that next peak here. I just placed the single crochet into that last stitch, and look at how pretty that ridge is. It just creates a really beautiful defined texture. So we're gonna go into the corner space and we are gonna place a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet back into that corner. Okay, just like that. That's just gonna give definition to our point. And then you continue on as usual. Remember, this first stitch sometimes gets hidden. We're gonna place a single crochet, one into every single stitch all the way till you get back to the first point. Okay, and I have come to the end, and all I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna go into that space and I'm gonna slip stitch to join, and my motif is complete. So I now have 64 stitches, because remember, in the points, we did an additional 2 to create that corner. So this is your official mystical lantern motif. I call it the mystical eye. It looks much more like an eye to me than a lantern. So you may remember that from those, from that hot pad I did a few weeks back. So that's it. So this is the actual motif. So you can, use this video as a jumping off point for creating other things. So this just focuses on the motif itself. And I'm kind of curious as to what you're going to make with your motif. Let us know in the comments down below. I'm sure we could all use some inspiration. So if you have any questions at all, please do also leave those for me in the comment box down below. I know some of you like to email me directly, so always feel free to do that. And you can do that at info@crochetcrafty.com. And of course, come and visit me on the website, crochetcrafty.com. Lots of free goodies there for you. And as always, come say hi to me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at The Stitch Sessions, and make sure to tag me in your creations. Now, before we go, I do want to show you a couple of things that I have made and will be making with my motifs. So let's have a little look real quick. So one of the things that I am doing with my mystical lantern is I'm using it to adorn these pockets on the back of a jean skirt. So this is a pair of jeans that I turned into a skirt, and I just was playing around with the motif, and I love how the contrast sits against the blue of the denim. So I'm really happy with how these came out. I think it's just a neat little add-on, and just kind of make something old come to life and new again. So this is one project I have in mind for these motifs. And the other thing I'm actually really excited about putting together is this piece of artwork. So I took 4 of the motifs and I put them together where the points met in the center. And I felt like this really gave me butterfly vibe. And so that's what I'm going to do. So what I did is I went to the fabric store and I bought some cotton. And so I'm going to use that to wrap around a canvas. And then I am going to hand stitch each of these onto the canvas. And that way you have this beautiful, what will look like an embroidered motif, but it's really just crochet, which is really cool. And all I did to create the antennae there is I started with a really tight circle, and then I worked a very long chain with another little circle down at the bottom. And then I created 2 of those, and then I just hand stitched them together. And then on the canvas, I just placed it on top, and there you have a fantastic piece of art. It's handmade, and it makes for a great gift. So I am thinking about creating this for my niece's bedroom, which will fall in line perfectly because she's got a whole wall of wallpaper with butterflies on it. It's got some purples and some pinks. So I think it's gonna just look super, super adorable. So those are 2 projects that I created with my motif. So make sure you share what you do with your motif down in the comments down below. All right, guys, that's it for me. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Bye-bye.